Welcome to the Rewind and Revive podcast. I come today, I'm feeling a little bit sheepish. It's been quite some time since the last episode. This is now the third, but what can I say? I needed to take a break. I was busy gallivanting on vacation briefly as well, sipping wine, eating pasta, the good things. But it is back to the grind now, and I am truly over the moon for the episode I have for you all today. This has been, I want to say, over a year in the making since I started researching for this episode. And when I started flirting with the idea of podcasting a few years ago, this was one of the films I immediately knew I wanted to cover almost instantly. And I'll be honest, it's a daunting task. The film itself is a sprawling beast. The production story is just as wild. For a long time, there weren't even that many English language resources on it. Hard to find English biographies on the director as well, and it just felt like a bit too much to take on as a new podcaster, but thankfully, in the years since, it's become a lot easier to tackle. More things have opened up and become available research-wise. And this is a filmmaker that I discovered a few years ago now, and the more I watched his work, the more obsessed I became. The director in question is Andrzej Żuławski, and the film we're talking about today is his 1988 sci-fi epic On the Silver Globe, even though technically most of it was shot in the 70s, not the 80s, but we will get into that. But for starters, I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest. He's the perfect person to help me unpack this movie. You might actually remember us talking on my old podcast a while ago now, where we covered David Lynch's Dune, also sci-fi. But I'm smiling as I'm saying this. It is my pleasure to welcome Van to the pod. You may know him by his handle, Van Watches Movies. My buddy, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing so good. How are you?
I'm good. I guess I'm smiling. I'm so excited to be doing this.
I know. I'm like so hyped for it.
Because when did we start planning this? Wasn't this like 2023, late 2023?
It was late 2023. I feel like you reached out to me and said like, would you be open to talking about this? And I was like, dude, yes. Whenever you need me, I will be ready. And sure enough, we are here now. Ready to talk about it.
I'm excited. And I feel like there haven't been that many podcasters covering it. I have seen a couple video essays on YouTube, but podcast-wise, it seems like it's slim pickings.
It does, yeah. The minute I saw this movie, I remember researching as much as I could, kind of the way that you're talking about now, and it's really hard to find anything on this movie that's like, it feels constructive. Everyone is almost saying the same thing, but I'm hoping that we can change that.
I hope so, fingers crossed. So, first things first, I'm curious how you got into Żuławski, and I guess specifically how On the Silver Globe came onto your radar.
I want to say it was actually like around the time that me and you kind of like started contacting each other online and becoming mutuals, because it was around the time that Relay was a big thing, and I remember that we were kind of using it, and I remember seeing that Possession was always on my feed in some form or another on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. It was everywhere, and I saw Possession, and I remember thinking, like, how do I watch this movie? And of course, the only like resources were at the time were pirating it, unfortunately. And now there's a lot of great labels that have put it out, Tufon being one of them that I put you on for the 4K copy. And that was one of them that I picked up. And I remember thinking that the website looks so sketchy. And I was like, it's $40. Like, let's take a gamble. Let's hope it gets here. And I remember paying for it. And it took like a month to get to me. And I just thought I lost the money. I was like, there's no way this is getting to me now. And I finally got it and I watched it. And I just loved it so much. I was like, whoever this filmmaker is, I need to watch more of his work. And then I kept looking more and more into his work, and I just came across On the Silver Globe and seeing that people were saying it's really hard to find. And I don't know why, but I am always fascinated by movies that are really hard to find for whatever reason. I feel like it's a challenge to like seek it out and be like, oh, I saw this movie that no one else can find. And so that's how I kind of came across it. I did unfortunately watch it under not legal means, I suppose, but there are some very great resources now to watch it, thankfully. So now you can watch it in a better quality. But yeah, that was my experience watching it, and I absolutely loved it.
Yay. I love that. Yeah, I think you can now find it. Well, yeah, I know you can now find it on YouTube. It says it's 4K. Doesn't really look like it to me.
Definitely not.
But it is higher quality. I think I saw it initially on this website called, what is it? Oh, EasternEuropeanMovies.com. Maybe it's that simple. And I paid for it. You can like pay day passes or whatever. But yeah, now it's on YouTube for free. or you can get a physical copy. But yeah, the same thing happened to me. I first saw Possession because most people do, I think. And On the Silver Globe was, I think, maybe the third film of his I checked out. And I'll be honest, the first time I watched it, I struggled so much to figure out what was going on. I couldn't follow it at all. What about you? Like that initial watch, did you struggle?
It's daunting. I mean, the copy I got was a bootleg, so it was online that I found someone selling it. And that's what I mean when I say that, like, it was definitely, like, not a legal mean. Like, I got it and I was like, oh, this is 1,000% like a bootleg copy. It's nowhere near, like, how it should look. And then I started watching it. I thought, like, what is going on this entire movie? It's very daunting. It's really hard to swallow. Obviously it feels like there's parts missing and we can kind of get into why. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it's very intimidating to watch.
Absolutely. How many times have you seen it now?
I think 3 or 4 times now.
Yeah.
The first time I watched it was shortly after Possession. And then I think I saw it a second or third time in the last 2 years. And then I rewatched it recently, like in the last week to prepare for this.
Yeah. So similar to me, this latest rewatch was my third. I first saw it in January 2023. That's a good timeline. And then last summer, and then now again in the summer as well. And it truly just clicked for me. I think partly I also watched a documentary about the making of the film last year. We can get into that as well. But also it's just one of those films that absorbs you. And I find that the more I watch it, the more absorbing it is. And I would say now it's like, you know how people have that one thing that they get fixated on for no logical reason? And like, this is my fixation. So I don't know, what was yours, Dune? I assume yours is Dune.
I mean, like, it kind of goes back and forth. I feel like I become really hyperfixated on specific movies for, like, periods of time where, like, for a while it was Megalopolis, because that kind of feels like the same version of this where, like, I can't explain what it is about the movie that just enthralls me, where it's, like, it's compelling, but it's also really messy. Southland Tales was that for a minute for me, and I actually just showed that to a friend recently as well. But it's, like, I can talk about a movie that is so perfectly done all day and I can really revere it for what it is. But when you have a movie like On the Silver Globe that is, I wouldn't say messy, but just has the unfortunate circumstance of being a movie that is incomplete, had a lot of production issues, just stuff like that where you're able to like look beyond the film itself and say like, you don't get it, man. Like this movie had so much working against it and it still somehow manages to be this really cool, fascinating thing. Like, I don't love films to be perfect. Like, yes, it can be. But also, when there's stuff behind it, I find that a lot more fascinating.
Yes. And I feel like that's why we're doing this today. That was honestly so perfectly put. I should have gotten you to introduce the podcast. That's exactly what I wanted to say. But I'm getting slightly ahead of myself. I'm thinking that we break this down in a specific way, but as I'm explaining this breakdown really quickly, just let me know if it sounds good to you, if you want to add anything.
Absolutely.
But the plan was, first, we dive into the background about Żuławski himself. I think that's important, give some context, a bit of an overview about who he was. Then we can move into On the Silver Globe, what it's about, the wild production story behind it, because as we're both saying, there's a lot to cover there. And then I have some questions for you sprinkled throughout, but how does that sound?
Absolutely. I'm in.
Cool. Hop, skip, and a jump. Let's go. So Andrzej Żuławski, born in Lviv, which at the time was Poland. Today is in the Ukraine, November 1940. He passed away in 2016 in February. And his upbringing was interesting. It was difficult. His upbringing was difficult. His earliest memories were shaped by the Second World War. I'll explain a bit more about that too. But his father was also a writer who worked for UNESCO. So Żuławski spent his teenage years in France. He went to high school there. He studied film there. He later studied political science in Paris and philosophy in Warsaw. Oh, by the way, speaking of his studies, he graduated from film school at 19, which that seems really young. People were built different back then. But when would you graduate from film school these days?
I think it depends
20s?
Really where you go to school. I mean, like, I know of people who have graduated and they're like 23, 24.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I have a few friends who went to film school and they're like the same age as me, but they've graduated a few years ago. So I want to say probably like 22, between 22 and 24.
Yeah, 19 is
So he was
wild.
grinding. He was really grinding, yeah.
It's insane.
He put the work in.
Yeah. So back to our story. So his love of film clearly grew early on. And Żuławski was enamored by the legendary Polish filmmaker Andrzej Wajda. And this wasn't just admiration. Like, he saw Wajda as almost like this godlike figure. Which, to be fair, he was huge at the time. So when he returned to Poland, Żuławski, in 1959, he got a chance to work under him as his assistant, which is incredible. Just again, taking these opportunities and going with them so early on in your career that you would think he would have had everything lined up for a very fruitful and successful career. Not the case. And I guess I should also add, Żuławski wasn't just a filmmaker, he was also a prolific writer, clearly runs in the family. But he wrote something like 20 books. And then as a director, he became known for this art house style, surreal, sometimes chaotic. I would say his most famous film, as we were mentioning earlier, is Possession in the West.
Very controversial as well.
Yeah, which probably helps with the popularity. And I think it won, Isabelle Adjani won at Cannes for Best Actress, which I mean, rightfully so. No?
She's my favorite Ellen in the Nosferatu adaptations.
Yes.
I think she is so fantastic, and I mean that film as a whole, you see it everywhere now. But there was a solid minute where, kind of back to 2 or 3 years ago, it was kind of becoming more and more sought after. And now I think there's a remake in production with Robert Pattinson, if I'm correct.
Seems great. I don't know about this, but that seems
You don't know
accurate.
about this?
No.
Hold on, I might be tripping.
No, I honestly, it's probably true. I mean, check anyway, but...
Oh yeah, Robert Pattinson to produce a remake of 80s horror movie Possession.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was all over the internet too, and I remember that people were really dogging on it, and part of me was also kind of I was hesitant, but also part of me is I really like Robert Pattinson, so I'm very interested to see what it becomes.
Do you know who's directing?
I don't. I think all there is right now is that he's
Producing.
I think he's producing. That's all it is.
I mean, I
right
guess
now.
I'm going to save my comments until I figure out who's directing, but I think that could be great if Pattinson is attached. He's a perfect little weirdo for it.
Who would be your pick for directing?
For directing? Yorgos could be interesting.
Yorgos would be very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
What do you
okay.
think?
I see who it is.
Is it?
So it's Parker Finn, who I think did Smile. Yeah, he did.
Oh.
I don't know who my pick would be, to be honest with you. Part of me wants to say Robert Eggers, but that's such a safe choice. That's almost the obvious choice. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Let me think on this and we'll come back to that.
We can come back to it. But I don't think my choice would have been the Smile director, I'll tell you that much.
No, it definitely would not have been. Not for me, anyway.
No. Anyways, all of this to say, Żuławski's films are an acquired taste. They're divisive, bold, chaotic. I would even describe them as angry. Is there any other adjectives you'd toss that for?
Angry is aggressive, but that's kind of the same thing as angry.
Yes.
But they are very aggressive, but they're also very I guess they make you sort of look inward. They're very reflective of a lot of the way that he seems to capture things, especially with On the Silver Globe, because even though it's incomplete, even though you're kind of watching it through this lens of what is this? There's a lot of insight, I think, to who he is, and he puts a lot of himself into it. But I think a lot of that passion and the way that he cares about it is something that we could all find in all of us in some way, even if it's not as aggressive as that movie is.
Oh, that's beautiful. What a beautiful way to talk about Andrzej Żuławski.
I love his work. It's intimidating too, so I try not to I'm holding back on some of his work because I'm I want to dive into it when I'm ready.
Yeah, no, same here. I don't know how many I've seen now, maybe six features, somewhere there. But yeah, what I find fascinating is once you watch more of his work, Possession isn't actually the most bold and frenetic film like so many people think. I think they all have this wild energy. So I always tell people, if you've seen Possession, do go further into that rabbit hole and dig more, because they all kind of have that same sort of aggressive vibe, as you were saying.
I think Possession is like you're saying, Possession's the most popular for sure. And I think it's mainly just because it is the most accessible, and considering just how crazy his work is, it kind of makes me think of how big Poor Things got whenever that dropped, because people really liked that. But then if you talk to anyone about any of Yorgos' other films, they're like, oh, I'm not touching those. And it's yeah, we get it. It's actually funny that you mentioned that. Looking at Yorgos now, they are very similar filmmakers. Mm-hmm. I think I agree with you. I think Yorgos would be the best fit for that remake.
Speaking of Yorgos, I'm off to go watch Dogtooth next week in 4K.
The 4K release? Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to see how it looks.
Yeah, me too. I haven't seen that film since, gosh, I don't know. I think it came out in 2009, 2010. I must have seen it in 2014, somewhere there. So it's been a while. Couldn't tell you how much I know. But Żuławski, yeah. So what else was he known for? He was known for his, I would say, flowery or almost theatrical dialogue. The performances he got from his actors as well. People are constantly screaming in pain or rage, or it just feels like that sometimes. And visually as well, he loves to distort people with his camera work. You have wide angle lenses, tilted lenses, those frantic handheld traveling shots that he loves so much. Color palette as well isn't exactly pretty. I'm saying all this stuff not as a detriment, but as somebody who has a very specific style. Is there something you would add to I guess, his visual language as someone who works in film yourself?
I mean, I love how you describe that. Just like it's not a detriment. It almost feels like it's enhancing the experience for you because it is very much like you're saying, like he uses a lot of these wide angle lenses and just the way that he handles a lot of the shots. Like I think Possession's probably his most like conventionally made film. And when you look at On the Silver Globe, it's like such a different tone. It's such a different visual style. Like even down to the color grading being like this pale like blue. Everyone has this sort of like porcelain look to their skin. Like it's really interesting to think about how distinct it looks. And yeah, like you're saying, it could feel like a detriment to some people, but once you like settle into it, it's really like fascinating how beautiful it can look at times.
Yeah, I like that you use the word beautiful as well, because I felt that way too, especially with On the Silver Globe. Like there are some instances where it's truly breathtaking in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I guess overall it feels that his films were born from this place of darkness. And that's why I mentioned earlier the Second World War and getting into that a bit more. So his whole family was killed during the Second World War, apart from his parents. His sister froze to death as well. And the reason why I'm mentioning all this is his earliest memory. This totally guts me. When he was 3 years old, he was home alone. His parents were working, and there wasn't anybody to watch him. So he went out to the balcony and looked across the street towards this like little patch of grass, past a cemetery and a park. And from there, he saw these German soldiers just lining people up and executing them. And for that to be your earliest memory, it's just something that you're gonna carry. And I don't know how you live without that coloring your worldview as an artist, in my opinion. So I think he always had that sort of darkness that he carried throughout his life. And even though he came from a literary family, even though he had these opportunities, working with Vida, building a film career so young, his life was always difficult. And that's not even touching on the struggles he had with censorship, releasing his films. I mean, did you know about any of this, like his earlier life?
I knew a lot about like his upbringing in terms of like, you know, like growing up during World War II. I didn't know about that specific sentiment you're just expressing there. But I mean, it is very much like you're saying, like if you were living through something like that, you are inherently going to just produce great art. I mean, if you're somebody who is a creative person, ultimately, like it becomes one of those weird things where like it's bold, and I think that's why he became so heavily censored, especially with this film specifically, which I'm sure we'll get into a lot later. But yeah, like even just movies like that, it's really fascinating. Even Possession, Cosmos, I think has a lot of that in there as well. Yeah, it's really fascinating to like think about how he came from all this and then seeing how that implements into his work.
Yeah. Oh my God, Cosmos. You just jogged my memory. I completely forgot about that film. I actually own it somewhere.
Yeah. It was like his last movie, I think.
Yeah. And that one, if you thought On the Silver Globe was hard to follow, oh boy. Cosmos. I need to watch Cosmos again because I feel like I followed it and I knew what was going on and it was in my brain for like a week and then just whoosh. Completely.
I love Cosmos. It's a solid movie. Yeah. It's hard to recommend any of his movies, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we're over here explaining all this stuff, and people are just going to be like, "Well, am I supposed to watch this?" But yeah, so his career, why was it difficult? Perfect segue. You just mentioned censorship, so we can get into that. This started, interestingly enough, even before he made films. So his novel Kino, that was rejected by state censors, and he wasn't allowed to release it, but somehow he was still allowed to get behind a camera. So he started working in Polish television before finally making his debut feature film, The Third Part of the Night, in 1971. Have you seen that?
I have not. It's one of those things where it's kind of like, I think I've talked to you about this as well with Wong Kar-wai and a lot of Jean-Luc Godard's films. Like, I find them very intimidating because they have such a large body of work. And the way that I feel about Possession being his like most accessible film, I saw On the Silver Globe, and I think from what I hear, On the Silver Globe is probably his most intimidating film. And so I feel like because I've got that one out of the way, I can definitely like watch his other films. I've seen The Devil, Cosmos I have seen, but I have not seen his other films, and it's mainly just because I'm like holding on to like a day where like I just know I'm gonna watch it. Peter Greenaway is another filmmaker who, like, I own almost all of his movies, and I've only seen 2 of them, and it's because I just keep thinking back, like, I'll watch you eventually, but for now, you are gonna sit there and you're going to wait until I just know that it's gonna be the right time.
Yes, that's how I feel about my Dai box set over here, the Ghost Stories by Radiance. I keep like passing
which they're
by.
great, putting out great stuff, yeah.
Yes. But yeah, no, I totally get what you mean. Just one day, one of these days. It's always growing the collection. But yeah, I would definitely watch The Third Part of the Night if I were you. I love this film. You can really see him starting to plant the seeds of what's to come. So it's actually cool that you've seen his later work, because then you can go back to this and be like, oh my God, it all started here. The visual style, the intense performances, you even have some recurring themes that he would tackle later on. Like you have the whole doppelganger thing from Possession. That's also in The Third Part of the Night. And just how on the Silver Globe, which we'll talk about, Drew, on family history, The Third Part of the Night was inspired by his father's real life experiences during the war. So again, keep going back to some war or another influencing his career. When it comes to his father worked as a lice feeder during the Nazi occupation. Do you know what that is? Do you want to take a wild guess?
A lice feeder?
Yes.
I've no I feel like hearing it is going to sound so different from what it actually is. So I don't even know if I want to take a guess. I just want to hear what it is.
Sure. So it's a bit grim, but here's what being a lice feeder was. So during the Nazi occupation, Polish civilians volunteered to let lice feed on their blood as part of a program to develop a typhus vaccine for German soldiers. And so why were they doing that? Because in exchange, the participants were given, I guess, somewhat protection from persecution. But that's just wild to me that job existed. Like, you see it play out in the film. So I had to pause the film and look it up because I was like, this cannot be real. Wild,
That's
no?
crazy. Yeah. No, I mean, you say it and I'm like, okay, that sounds exactly like what she's saying. But also I was like, I gotta just make sure.
Did you look it up?
No, I mean, just what you said immediately. I was like, this sounds exactly like what you're saying it. Like, it's almost like when someone says something and you're like, you have to almost be like, okay, let me just make sure what you're saying is correct.
True.
But yes, like you said lice feeder and I was like, I don't even want to take a guess. I feel like it's exactly like what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's gross. But yeah, so again, drawing from family experience. So you see that play out in the film, and Żuławski wove it into The Third Part of the Night. But what's interesting here, and why I'm also bringing it up, is because it becomes this haunting metaphor because you've got people physically drained, literally feeding on parasites, while also experiencing this deep mental and emotional exhaustion. That's this like through line in the film. So yeah, it's interesting knowing all of that and kind of how it comes together in this movie. And the film was co-written by Żuławski and his father. Like again, just drawing directly from his dad's experiences. And then his wife starred in it too. And when it finally premiered in 1971, it just was too disturbing, too raw, too real for communist authorities, and they pulled it from theaters immediately. So he goes from trying to write a book, having that be rejected, trying to make a movie, having that be rejected, and these are, I guess you could call his first slaps on the wrist from authorities. But he didn't stop. He just kept going. Then he made The Devil. That was screened for censors in 1972. You said you've seen that one. How do you like it?
I love The Devil. I could see how that movie could be really, I mean, any of his movies could be really controversial. That was another film that I experienced like pretty close after on the Silver Globe. There's a video store here in Atlanta that has pretty much any movie you could think of just like available. And they're definitely like bootleg copies, but like it's the only way I could watch this movie. But yeah, it's just, I remember just being transfixed by it the same way that I was with Possession and on the Silver Globe, of course. But it was just one of those things where I kept watching it. I was like, I don't know how this is going to come together. And ultimately, by the time it was over, I was like, that was fantastic. But I feel just like mentally drained in a good way. Yeah. But just one of those things where you just keep watching and watching. It just keeps getting better, but also worse at the same time. Like, it feels like, I don't know how to explain it. You get what I'm saying. Like, it's very much like a dreadful experience, but it's so pleasing to watch.
Yes. I see it as this, like, really dark and twisted take on Hamlet almost. Like, I kept thinking about Hamlet while I was watching it. And yeah, you're right. It's just chaos and depravity from start to finish. And I think it's also a movie that really demands your attention, like full attention across that 2-hour runtime. It's exhausting. Yeah, it's just frenetic dialogue, constant screaming, nonstop violence, and then again that dizzying and invasive camera work, which I would argue is even more dizzying than on the Silver Globe. Yeah, I say this one sits pretty high on my ranking for Żuławski movies for myself. What about you?
It's pretty high up there. It kind of feels the same way that like Come and See does, where like once it hits like a certain point, I want to say it's like a 30 or 40-minute mark. Like, once it gets going, it doesn't stop, and it almost feels like it's like grabbing you, and it's like you're gonna watch. Yeah, it's like mentally exhausting. It's really it feels like a task, but at the same time like one that you're very like you come out on the other side and you're like glad that you watched it. It's almost like a roller coaster. You're scared to get on, and then you get off it. You're like, "Wow, let's do that again."
Yes.
Maybe not so soon, but you know, you're glad that you did it.
Yes, absolutely. And again, he's tackling themes that become relevant in his work. You know, oppression, anger, and once again, that was the reason the Polish censors again were just like, absolutely not. And maybe it wasn't because it was political. Maybe it was just too much. Maybe it was just too excessive and too raw. But either way, it wasn't released. It was shelved and left in limbo for 18 years, which Żuławski ended up calling cinematic purgatory, which is...
Yeah, I've seen that phrase before.
Yes. But so here's where it gets weird. So years later, when he was finally able to recover the film canisters, like for The Devil, he noticed that the celluloid was worn down, meaning that someone had been screening it. Like these authorities that had it, they were showing it in secret. Behind his back, which I find really bizarre, and why, you know? Very odd.
That's interesting. I've never heard about that story about him like finding the canisters and them being like clearly used. But at the same time, like you could always like look at that situation and think to yourself, like maybe they were showing it to other people to show like why can't we show this or why we can't show this. Or there's a very good chance maybe they just were enjoying it for themselves and seeing like I don't know how to explain how they could have been watching it, if that makes sense. Like there's do you think maybe that's the case?
I don't know. I mean, that idea that you just had of maybe they were showing it, maybe someone was actually vouching for it, that didn't even cross my mind, but that
maybe not even vouching for it, but just saying like what was so bad about this movie, and they're like, well, let me show you right now. like let's go in the booth, let's take a look.
Yeah, I like that theory. If that's
but
true.
But there is also a good chance, maybe like you're saying, like they were vouching for him, which that never crossed my mind. Yeah, they were just depraved. Who knows? There's so many reasons that could have been the case, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So after the disaster with The Devil, Żuławski was, I guess we can say, strongly encouraged to leave Poland. And this was 24 hours after the Communist Party was screening the film. They slipped him a passport and they were like, you should probably go. So he left for France a day later, and heartbreakingly enough, he had to leave his wife and son. And that really hurt him.
And it wasn't common for people to have passports in Poland at the time either.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, she stayed behind. The kid stayed behind. He left by himself. Can't even imagine how that must feel. But yeah, so that really broke him. And while he was in France, I guess the silver lining is he made the highly successful 1975 film, The Most Important Thing, Love. That's starring Romy Schneider. You haven't seen that one, no?
I've not seen this one.
It starts off as a romantic tale, and I remember thinking to myself, like, oh wow, we're getting a romance from Żuławski, like how cute, how great. And then the chaos just kicks in all over again, and I'm just like, I was a fool to think that he wouldn't go back to his old tricks. But that's where things get interesting too, because after that film came out, it picked up steam, and people were taking note of him in Europe. Especially the art house crowd. And at the same time, the Polish film industry in the mid-70s was thriving as well. Things were picking up. So the government basically kind of tucked their tail between their legs and politely asked him to come back. And they brushed off what happened with The Devil as a misunderstanding, which in my opinion is total bullshit.
Yeah, I remember reading that. I was like, what the heck?
I'd be furious. So he came back to Poland only to find out that his wife had left him. And I mean, this poor guy, it's just shitty situation after shitty situation. But I also
there's a pretty big time gap between him leaving and coming back. It's like, how many years?
What did I say? 18?
18. You're right. Something it is
crazy.
18.
But I mean, I would think that they would have been in touch, you know?
I would think so. But I mean, who knows what was going on with her? Who knows what was going on with him?
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Żuławski, like as much as I admire him as an artist, he was by all accounts a difficult man. Like even his son said in a documentary I watched that his relationships never worked out because he was just so consumed by his work. Like he was married to his work. I'm trying to think of like a filmmaker we can compare that to in modern day. Anybody?
I mean, is Jodorowsky still alive?
I think so. Yes. Yeah. And he also
I feel like
has
his
a
son was
failed
saying the
epic.
same thing about him. Yeah, Dune. Yeah, that's the thing. Is I think I draw a lot of comparisons to Dune in this as well. Not even Jodorowsky's Dune, but just David Lynch's Dune. Like both movies were just cursed productions. Not David Lynch. He had a successful career, did not have the same hardships that Żuławski did, but at the same time, like it's just the same kind of like story beats that we see in a lot of these like history of production stories. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting that they're both sci-fi as well. But you know what? Silver lining is from all of this heartbreak, he was back in Poland now and sad, angry, all of the things, and that's what pushed him to start working on the Silver Globe. So this was born from despair, from anger, from sadness. And it's also worth noting really quickly that the film was funded by the Polish government, which meant that technically it was supposed to reflect positively on the Polish government. Not really. Didn't end up happening. Is there anything else you want to dive into the background before we embark on this journey of the film itself?
I mean, I see the notes where you're going to talk about how his like uncle wrote the story that it's based on, the novels, which I actually like looked into it today. I kind of want to read them. I have not read them. Have you?
So let me tell you, yes. Or no, I
you
just
have
started.
read them, okay.
I just started.
Okay.
Yeah, so on the Silver Globe, the film is actually an adaptation of his great uncle's work, the Lunar Trilogy, and this is considered the first piece of Polish science fiction. The first book is titled On the Silver Globe. That came out in 1901. The Conqueror came out in 1908. That's the second one. And The Old Earth, that came out in 1911. And from what I understand, Żuławski's film adapts the first two books. I don't think it does all of the third. Don't quote me on that, though, because I'm not at that part of the story yet.
Yeah,
but
I was actually going to ask if you know if it was like only adapting the first book, but now you're saying it's two, so that's interesting.
So that's that was a great comparison with Lynch as well, because he as well had to squish multiple books into one film and struggling under the source material. I mean, of course these things are going to happen. You can't squish that much material into one film and say, we're good, this is the story. You miss so much.
How long are the books? Do you know? I mean, you have them, so.
You. Do you see here?
And that's technically all three books, right?
That's all three.
Okay.
The reason why I started reading it sooner than I thought I was going to, like the reason why I put off buying it and reading them was because I was like, oh, it'd be super small font and take me 50 years to read. No, I ended up discovering that this is something that people read I saw somebody's comment somewhere that this is something that kids read in either, I think, early high school or something like that. So lo and behold, yeah, it's a pretty breezy read, and it's entertaining so far. I'm glad
you have that, because I was really interested in reading it. Now I have a reference to it.
Well, the reason why we haven't been able to read it is because it just got translated a few years ago.
I saw that online,
for the first time.
That's crazy, considering how I guess I'd say popular that movie is, but really it's more of a niche thing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and not even just that. I mean, once you realize like how many sci-fi works this has inspired, it's pretty wild. Like Stanislaw Lem called it one of the best sci-fi stories he's ever read. I mean, there's some similarities you can make with Dune once you look at the synopsis of all three books as a whole, not just on the Silver Globe. Yeah, and again, it came out in 1901, so it's crazy to me that it just got an English translation, like 3 years ago, maybe.
So it's recent then. That's interesting. I want to read it.
Yeah, should grab it. So yeah, so far, I mean, they're bleak. I'm not that far into the first one, but they're quite bleak. And one quick thing I want to mention as well, because I've seen people complain online and say that in the film, the dialogue is a bit too flowery and nonsensical. But the thing is, Żuławski spent 2 years adapting the screenplay, and some of that dialogue comes from the books. As we said, they were written in 1901. Of course, that language is going to be a bit more poetic and ornate. So, I don't know. I think that's worthwhile saying that it's not just Żuławski, but it's also the books. And that being said, he also doesn't follow the books strictly. Again, how could he? Has to compress that much information. I'm basically just defending the books in the movie. I think that people who enjoy the film should read the books. You should read the book. Anybody that likes Dune should read the books. So that's my spiel.
I find it really cool that you're defending it in general. It makes me wonder, like, are the books like written in sort of this abstract way where you're like not sure what it's trying to say, if that makes sense?
Not really. Not really. I'm so far able to follow. I'm following the
Like
book
it's pretty,
better than I'm following
pretty easy
the
to
film.
follow.
Yes.
Well, the book is also not missing like tons of pieces. I guess you could say that's me trying to make a joke, but also like, yeah, like I wanted to read it, and I think the thing that's kept me from reading it right now is just that it makes you feel like the film is very intimidating, but it makes you wonder if reading the book would make it easier to follow the film.
Yes.
And I follow the film pretty easy now that I've watched it a few times, and I'm sure that we've all probably gone through like the sense of like going through the motions online and being like, what are the scenes that are missing? What was it supposed to be? Let's look at it in order, and then being like, oh, okay, so that's what it was supposed to be. It makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. But even now, like some plot points are slightly different as well. Like the way the film opens is different to how the book opens. Like the folks who find the film are described differently than in the or in the book. Did I just say the same thing twice? Yes, it's different in the book to the film, like how the canister is found. This is all going to make sense if you're listening to this and don't know what we're talking about. It's the first scene in the film. It'll make sense when we bring it up. But yeah, some plot beats are different. So yeah, I think it's easier to follow, but will it help you understand the entire film? I don't know. Ask me again in a month.
Is it structured slightly differently as well? Because I know that in the movie there's like I guess it depends on how far you've gotten, but in the movie there's like this giant prolonged sequence that's meant to take place before the film, but you don't know that. And so is the book? How far have you gotten into the book? Is it written that way?
So the book is so far written similar to the movie, where in the movie, it's the POV perspective for the majority of it of the astronauts, right?
Okay.
For the first half. The book basically is like diary entries, if that makes sense, from the astronauts.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. Yes. But then there's also, it takes you back to Earth, and then you kind of figure out what's going on in Earth.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like really like I gotta read this now. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so as we mentioned, to go rein us back in, way far back, where was I? Oh, yes. Starting the film. So Żuławski turned to this project when he was in a really tough place emotionally, as we were saying. He read the Lunar Trilogy as a teenager, and he as well called it some of the most disturbing but also saddest books that he's ever read. And again, think about it. His wife left him. He was having all these struggles in his career. He was not doing well. And so the sadness of the books, that deep despair in them, that's what drew him closer to them. So he had this very sort of intimate relationship with these books as well. I mean, they were also written by his great uncle, as we said. And I feel like when you watch it, I think you mentioned this at the start of our chat, when you watch the film, you can really see how his own life bled into it. There's even that subplot with the astronauts, spoiler, whose wife back on Earth falls out of love with one of them. And sends him on this mission. Yeah, you were right on the money earlier when you said that you can see how his life bled into this, especially when you learn about his life, and that's why I wanted to open by talking about his life, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, even outside of Żuławski, there's a lot of filmmakers where, like, it's easy to just watch the film and take it at face value as, like, oh, that was a good movie, that whatever, I like the story, however it might be, but then you, like, look at what was happening in their life at the time, and it's like, okay, so this happened in their life, and then 3 years later they make this movie that has a very specific plot point, and it's like, was this inspired by that, or was this just, like, you know, does causation equal correlation kind of thing? And I think with a lot of filmmakers, it's easy to like look at it and be like, oh, that's just a movie. But there's a lot of filmmakers like Żuławski, and it's just fascinating, like looking back at their films and saying like, okay, so this is definitely about this.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I guess now is a perfect time as any to jump into the plot of On the Silver Globe before we jump back to the production story. There's a reason why I'm jumping back and forth, and I hope this all makes sense. But I'm excited for this part because I really hope that it helps folks follow along when they're watching the film. I know it can be a bit tough of a film to piece together, and I will mention as well, for those of you who haven't seen the film, there will be some spoilers. But I feel like if you've made it this far into us speaking, you've probably seen the film. So
I would hope so.
Yes. Are you ready? Are you hydrated?
I am hydrated. I got my water right here.
Perfect.
Going right into it.
On the Silver Globe opens in the far into the future, post-apocalyptic version of Earth. Basically, the planet's been ruled by indulgent capitalism. That's at least how I interpret it. Maybe you have a different reading. The planet's been just massacred, essentially, and it's this broken Earth. And on this broken Earth, we have pockets of civilization, and then these more so primal communities, so they're divided. And one day, a group of hunters from this community stumbles upon this artifact. That's what I mentioned earlier. They said it fell from the sky. And they bring it to a couple of scientists to trade for drugs, which, first of all, what a transaction. And the scientists discover that the artifact is a film, like a found footage recording of a failed mission to another planet. And I don't think the film specifies, but the books say that the planet is the moon. Am I tracking everything so far? Is there anything you want to add to kind of set the stage for those first initial?
No, I mean, I think you're on the money right there. I was able to gather that it was the moon the first time I watched it, but it did take me a minute. And then I also didn't realize that it was a flashback until, or I guess not a flashback, but the recording itself, until we were like, I want to say like 10 minutes into that. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is actually this. And I don't know if you've ever watched any like Bollywood cinema, but it very much felt like that. Yeah, like they do flashback sequences in movies, and they don't like, they'll have flashback sequences for like 40, 50 minutes. Yeah. Whereas you see like a flashback in a movie now and it's like maybe at most 10 minutes sometimes. And it's insane to think that this is how this movie plays out for a solid like first half.
Yeah. Yeah, I was lost as well the first time I watched this. I was like, wait, whose storyline? I don't even think that I gathered initially that we were on Earth. Like, I just had no idea. But yeah, so this other planet, I guess the moon, they were hoping that this could replace Earth. It had breathable air. It was habitable in theory, but the tapes proved that the mission failed completely. And from there, that's when the film shifts and we start watching the tape itself. Side note, what I think is so cool, the film went into production in 1976. And the original novel, as I said, was structured like diary entries on the Silver Globe, not the other two, or logbooks of the mission. So the way the film plays out, at least for a big chunk of it, it looks like a found footage movie. And I think that's pretty revolutionary when you think about it, because, correct me if I'm wrong, found footage didn't really hit the mainstream where it takes up the majority of a film until like the 80s. Like you had, you know, POV shots in certain moments of a film, but not for this long. And if On the Silver Globe came out when it was supposed to in the mid-70s, I think it would have been one of the first films to lean into the found footage genre. What do you think?
I mean, the only other thing I could think about that was around the same time was Cannibal Holocaust, and even then that was like 80s, I think.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
Was it? Now I gotta Google that as well. I'm so curious.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because it was like one of the first instances where it happened.
88.
But 88, oh, so it was close then.
Yeah.
And even then, it's still technically like released before 88. Yeah. If you look at like, it's 1981 is like considered the official release date because it premiered in, it premiered at Cannes in 88 too, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it came out in the mid 70s, that's what I'm saying. Like, even though you've had like in Jalos, you have POV shots, even Halloween as well. That's another example. But it's
not a prolonged sequence.
Exactly.
The same way this is, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool. I would even consider this like one of the earliest found footages. But yeah, so through this found footage, we meet the astronauts. Only 3 of them have survived: Marta, Piotr, and Jerzy. They've got these cameras strapped to their bodies, and that's what acts as the POV footage. We watch them trek through this harsh, unforgiving landscape, I'd call it, until eventually they find this spot on the beach and try to start a life. Marta becomes pregnant. She gives birth to a son. And this is where things get weird because we realize that the child ages twice as fast as he would on Earth. Quick pause, because I want to get my facts straight. The kids age quicker, but the astronauts age normally, right?
I think so. And I think it's mainly just because the kids were born there.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that's like a huge plot point, and I still don't think I fully understand why.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's ever explained, but yeah, like the kids, it's like a huge plot point that the kids age quickly, but I don't think it ever explains why they do and no one else does. Like, it's not like the beach on Old, you know what I mean? The planet makes you old. Oh, the beach makes you old, like it's actually a beach.
I wonder
you ever think about that?
On the Silver Globe.
For a second, I said the planet makes you old, but then I was like, wait, they're still on the beach. Like, that's crazy. It clicked for a second. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you just blew my mind with that. You must be a fan of On the Silver Globe. Oh my god.
Old is actually like a very small adaptation of that one scene.
Oh my god.
That's crazy. I'm just now putting this together,
Yeah, me
like
too.
big brain energy.
So good. So, okay, so let's just agree that the kids grow up fast and nobody else does. And from here, I guess spoilers again. I'm just going to stop saying that. There's just spoilers. Deal with it.
We're 50 minutes in. If you can't avoid spoilers, you just watch the movie.
Exactly. So, Marta gives birth. Eventually, Piotr is killed. We don't really know how much time has passed or exactly what gets Piotr, but he's gone. He's just kind of found dead, I think. And Marta keeps giving birth. And after, I don't know how many kids, maybe her third or fourth, she dies in childbirth. And that leaves Jerzy as the last surviving crew member of the original crew. Meanwhile, Marta's son is growing up, again, rapidly. And eventually, he impregnates her 3 daughters. And so this tribe just keeps expanding generation after generation. Jerzy enough, he kind of stays apart from them, but not really. He's the only one that's not half feral, I guess. And he's the only one that's left with the knowledge of the old world or of Earth. And because of that, the tribe starts seeing him as this godlike figure almost, until they start viewing him as a threat as well. Decades pass. Jerzy, now an old man, makes one final attempt to reach out, drags himself back to the damaged spaceship, and sends that video transmission back to Earth. And then he dies alone. Is there anything you want to add here before we jump to the second half of the plot? I don't think I missed anything major, did I?
No, you hit pretty much everything that's important. It's interesting the way that the film is shot during this entire sequence to me too as well, because it is like you're saying, like it is kind of shot in this sort of found footage style, but there's a lot of cuts in there that just feel like they're just like really small cuts that don't feel like they're jumping to much of anything, and it's like, why are these cuts even there? And it just feels like it's just like this sporadic energy that's happening the whole time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think it's cool. What do you think about it?
I love it. I think it's so cool. I mean, it just makes sense to me. I think especially after this third rewatch, it just really made sense what I was viewing, why it's so chaotic. It speaks to, what was going on to these characters as well. I mean, it is a chaotic situation. Yeah. It is crazy.
The thing you mentioned about like this sort of like messianic figure where they see him as like, and then like the image of the poster has like this character with like a thorn of roses or a crown of thorns. It makes me think of like just how there's so much symbolism in there, and it feels like it's really like in your face about it, but it's also like not directly addressing it. And I think that's really cool.
I agree. Absolutely. Yeah. It just makes me wonder about those missing scenes. But yeah, during this rewatch, it also hit me. It's something, hear me out. This may sound crazy, but you could argue that this is Żuławski's darkest film. And I stand by that statement. Maybe not visually, aside from that one scene in the final act, which we'll get into. That's pretty graphic. But thematically, let's just break it down. Let's just break down my crazy theories. So the world has gone to hell, clearly. Even before we land on this planet, a group of astronauts then crash lands onto this planet, or the moon, I should start calling it the moon. They realize they have no way home. That alone is terrifying. Then what do? They have children until we discover that those children age rapidly. Pretty soon, the whole colony starts forming through inbreeding, if we're being honest. And then they start to regress. They're feral. They're barely human. Then they start exploring the world by boat, trying to see like, okay, let's maybe there's a way to make this reality okay. Then they run into these monsters. And I mean, then we discover that these monsters and these humans are procreating. I mean, everything that happens, that's not even just covering to the point where we get to the new astronaut that lands. So sure, you could say, oh, possession is disturbing, it's messy, blah, 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 it's grotesque. But then you look at On the Silver Globe and how messy and grotesque and sad this is on a grand cosmic scale. Yeah. Can you validate me on this?
No, I agree. No, I completely validate. You're very like... It's one of those things where, like, I agree with you so completely. Looking at it from, like, an outside perspective, if you only were able to watch the film, like, visually, without any sort of audio, not knowing what the plot is going on, I think you could look at Possession and say, like, this one looks darker. like visually, like in terms of what you're seeing on screen, but thematically and like what's happening story wise in terms of like the story elements, the story beats, the relationship from one character to another, how that sort of works together. Like 1,000%, this is a darker film. Like it's kind of one of those things where you're like looking about like you're. If you ever had to like recommend a movie to somebody where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't stop thinking about this, and then you're saying the plot points out loud, and you're like, why am I recommending this? This is fucked up. Like no one's gonna like this but me.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you agree. I had that moment. Like, it was this light bulb moment to me the other day where I was, I guess, figuring out what I was going to say for this episode and putting it all down on paper. And I'm like, wow, this is dark. This is not okay.
I feel like I had that feeling whenever I saw Beau is Afraid and someone was like, what did you see? And I was like, it's a really funny movie, actually. And they're like, this sounds fucked up. It's like, yeah.
Exactly. So where was I? So back to the story, even though I kind of gave away part of it. But so now we're 50 years into the future. I don't think this is set in the film. Maybe it is in passing, but the books say it's been 50 years. So now we meet Merrick, another astronaut. He travels to the same planet. He lands in the exact place where Jagged was, so many years ago. I think he actually programmed his ship to do that. That would make sense. But what does he find? He finds a fully formed feral civilization descended from the first settlers, and they think that Merrick is a savior sent from Earth to rescue them from suffering. And their suffering comes in the form of these bird-like, winged, telepathic monsters who dominate the planet. They're called Sherns. Give me your first impression of the Sherns, because they're weird.
It's hard to describe like how I felt watching this movie. And I think it's mainly just because it's like we said, like there's such a distinct look to it. The first time I watched it, I was like, what is this? Are they like, I was fascinated by it. Like I was like, whoa, this looks cool, but what is going on? Like, and it feels like the more I watch it, the more I'm like, okay, this is normal. Like this makes sense. But the first time seeing it visually is just such like a, like it's such a specific like design that I feel like I've never seen replicated anywhere else. And the whole film is kind of like that, distinct wise. Yeah. Like there are images in this film that I don't think I've ever seen another film and been like, whoa, this is just like on the Silver Globe. This is just like this. And I think the closest I think I've gotten to that is like the still suits in Dune. And even then, that's such like a specific thing that's like costume wise. There's nothing like the Sherns.
Yeah. They're crazy.
It's cool.
Yeah, I was just as confused as you were the first time. I was like, wait a minute. And then during this third rewatch, I was kind of paying attention to their mouths when they would talk. I'm like, can you see anything move beneath the costumes and the masks? I'm still not sure if their mouths actually move. Maybe you know, but I don't think so. I'm not sure.
I don't think they do.
No.
But also the Blu-ray that I have for it is like not the best quality, and I ordered the same 4K that you did, and it still hasn't arrived. So I'm hoping to like catch that soon. But like, I know, and even then though, I don't think it would have gotten here before we recorded. So that's only a thing. But I mean, who knows? I'll rewatch it as soon as I can. Yeah. But yeah, the Blu-ray I have for it is like it's not even 1080p. I think it's like 720 at max. But it's the only way I could watch it.
Oh no! Yeah, the YouTube one's probably better. Moderately.
It probably is.
Yeah. But yeah, so the Sherns, they are grotesque, they are unsettling, and they are mating with the women from the human tribe, giving birth to these hybrid beings, half Shern, half human, and they're treated like total outcasts. These half Shern, half humans, like the lowest of the low. And so the human tribe is living this bleak, brutal existence. They're constantly threatened by the Sherns, and when Merrick arrives, they see him as this messiah, as we were saying, and they hope that he's going to lead them in a revolt against these oppressors, the Sherns. But while Merrick is off preparing to go to war, we cut back to Earth, and then we learn the harsh reality that I touched on earlier very briefly. He was sent on this mission in the first place because his actress girlfriend was sleeping with one of his colleagues. And they basically conspired to get rid of them so they could continue their affair. And now they're left to sit with this decision that they sent him off to his death. What did you make of that little side story of them?
It feels like the most human part of the story in a weird way, because it's the only thing that I think we as humans can like even relate to. Like we can latch onto and be like, okay, I've seen this before. but it somehow feels like it's the most out of place plotline in the story. So it's like it's the most normal that story is ever going to be, but it's also like, why is this here? So I think it's one of those things where I didn't mind that it was there, but it was also like, it doesn't feel like you fit here. I don't mind it, but it's like, why out of the whole story is this the one thing we're coming back to?
Yeah.
It's a really hard film to describe to anybody, and I think I forget about that moment as well. Like even talking about Sherns is like, what does that even mean?
Yes. I guess I haven't really described. Well, I did describe. I said bird-like
No.
creatures.
I guess what I mean is like describing it to somebody else what does that? How do you describe that to somebody? It's like bird-like creatures, yes.
They're
But
black.
seeing it is like, whoa! It's like that is more than a bird.
You can't. Yeah, you can't. There's no way you can just. Yeah, I just agree with you. There's no way that you can describe this properly and do the
Bird-like
visuals
creature
justice.
is like the closest you can get to describing that, I think.
Good enough. But yeah, so Merrick leads this revolt. Now we're back to the moon, stepping fully into this messiah role that they've placed him in. Although he objects at the start, but then he kind of settles into it. But here's the tragedy. He realizes way too late that he was just a pawn. He was a pawn on Earth and he's a pawn on the moon. The tribe and their leaders, especially the priests, they were using him the whole time. And eventually those leaders turn on him and they start seeing him as a outsider from Earth, not a savior at all, but a threat to their fragile order. That's how I interpreted the sort of switching and turning on him. Is that how you looked at it?
Yeah, very much so. Like we talk about how influential this movie is, and it's still very much the kind of like, I guess you could say, archetype type characters in the story beats that we see in a lot of sci-fi that's modern now, where like Interstellar, like he's being sent to do one thing when in reality he's being coerced into doing this for something else, right? And in Interstellar, it's something that's more personal to him, and so we're able to get on his side a little bit more. With Dune, it's a planet is given to somebody, and then they're coerced into killing them, essentially, for whatever reason. And so it kind of feels the same way where someone gets sent somewhere to do something. They don't know that they're basically walking into their own trap, or they're walking into their own fate that is going to be death. And it's a story like beat that I think is so common now, but we don't see it that much in sci-fi until like the mid, or I guess like early 2000s. Even like Solaris, you could say, is a big one too.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't make that connection. Now I feel so foolish, but you're absolutely right. And I love Solaris.
Solaris is good. How do you like the remake?
I actually haven't seen the remake. I'm nervous to go
It's
there.
okay.
I don't know how I
like
feel
it.
about
It's all right.
Tarkovsky remakes. That seems...
No, it's very different.
Isn't George Clooney in that?
He is. I think we may have talked about this as well, but Ryosuke Hamaguchi has a adaptation of that. Did you know that?
Of Solaris?
You can't find it anywhere. But if you look at his filmography on like IMDb, Letterboxd, he did an adaptation of it. It's like 90 minutes long, and you cannot find it anywhere. There are people who have logged it on Letterboxd who say that it's incredible, but it's like my dying mission to watch this movie. I don't know how to find it anywhere.
You're blowing my mind with this right now. Have you looked at... I mean, it's kind of simple. You know how I mentioned that EasternEuropeanMovies.com? There's one for Asia, too. I can't remember the name. I think it's also just a very obvious URL. But you could try there. They also have... They're run by the same company as EasternEuropeanMovies.com, and they do day passes.
Oh, do they? Okay,
which is
so,
great.
I mean... It was a college film that he did. So it was in 2007. Oh. It's a shot while the director was still in college. The film is a remake of the Russian film of the same name.
That blows my mind.
But yeah, it's impossible to find. And trust me, I've dug pretty deep before just to see what I could find. It's been watched by 27 members. Wow. Liked by 9 people. It's impossible to find. Like, it really is.
Let me know.
I've been wanting to find this thing since I saw Drive My Car. Because I saw it on there and I was like, yo...
Yeah. Oh, man.
Tell me more, you know what I mean?
That I would watch instantly. I don't know. There's something about like a George Clooney starring in Solaris, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not this like George Clooney hater, but it just seems weird to have such a Hollywood star in Solaris.
What's interesting though is that like you go back and watch Solaris, and I don't hate the remake. I actually think it's, for a remake, it's okay. it cuts a lot of really important stuff out. But you go back and watch Solaris, and I'm like, dude, that's George Clooney right there. Like, that is him. That is Russian George Clooney. It's kind of crazy. I'm like, I get why they cast him.
Okay, fair. Okay, now I'm curious. Now you just sold me on this.
We gotta find this Raisuke Hamaguchi Solaris.
Yes.
That is priority.
Yes, that's much more important. So, where did I stop? Oh yes, Merrick. He was fooled.
Merrick, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So all of this, as we were saying, leads to his downfall in the final act, the final few moments that I don't want to spoil. Also because I don't know how to talk about it without getting this episode flagged somehow. There's a moment on the beach with these massive stakes being driven into the ground. I was going to ask you, how would you film that? Like, not visually, but I mean, how would you even get the actors on there?
On board. Oh,
not for the cross. I'm talking before the stakes in the.
You know, that's one of those things where, like, I watch that movie and I always think about it because being able to work in film now, it opens your eyes to, like, oh my gosh, like, even the simplest shot can take hours to set up. It can take anywhere between a few, like, maybe less than an hour, maybe 2 or 3 hours. It just depends really on what they're trying to achieve. And I often find that the farther I go back in time to, like, a movie being made, like if it's the 70s, the 60s, 50s, I am always a lot more, like, fascinated by it because I'm like, we have technology for this now. We have this now. We have all of this stuff that's easy to bake now. But back then, it's like you had to really be creative. You had to really be talented to be able to think of how you would achieve a specific look, even a specific style, or even just something as specific as that. I wish I had an answer for you. Because, like, when I talk to you about, like, visually, like, how something like this could be achieved, it really fascinates me how this was made in 1975, and it still blows me away. And that's what I mean when I say that, like, you watch a movie like this and it looks so specific and so distinct that it's, like, hard to even find something that's so similar to it. Yeah, it stands really well on its own, and it's hard to even place how something like that would be done.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, especially during this rewatch, and I was like, I need to figure this out. I need to know how this was done. But yeah, that's the film. And even just describing it like this, like, you can tell, as we're both saying, it's massive. It's an incredibly ambitious project, both in scope and theme. I'd call it a speculative sci-fi epic, one that's less about technology and more about, the moral questions, religious questions, societal questions. Overall, I would say it has a pretty pessimistic worldview, but one that feels earned. What do you think? Like, anything about the themes you want to add or how you view it as?
Very pessimistic, very nihilistic as well, I think. It's like, I think what I really like about this movie in terms of, like, its themes and the way that it's sort of tonally, like, presented is that everything looks like it feels incredibly dreary, and it feels like everything as far as, like, hope is lost. Like, there is no way out for these characters to keep going, and somehow they keep doing it, and it's like every single chance that they get to, like, find salvation or hope or something to, like, help them come along, it's just, like, immediately, like, takes a step back, like, every single time. It feels like they're not digging themselves in a bigger hole, but they don't know it. Like, like, when you're watching a movie like Uncut Gems, where the main character's digging themselves in a bigger hole over and over again, and they're actively doing it, and they're aware that they're doing it. This one feels like they're not aware of what they're doing, and they just keep doing it, and somehow it's like, why would you keep doing that? Like, stop playing with the rat trap, you know what I mean?
It's so true. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And yeah, I guess this is a good part to get back to the production story, because we didn't talk about some big elements of the movie. I wanted to first just get through the plot just, bit by bit and get that over with. But for the production story, so Żuławski was close friends with Vida at this point. And Vida told him, or he advised him, not to do the film. He told him straight up this was too big for the Polish film industry to handle. And I mean, fair. It was an incredibly ambitious project, as we've said. And yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier. I keep thinking about Jodorowsky's Dune as well. Like, there's so many parallels there, which you so eloquently mentioned, of just these projects that were way too big and these stubborn filmmakers that were just like, I don't care, I am doing this. And at least Żuławski got farther than Jodorowsky, right?
Yeah.
Slightly.
Achieved more. He was actually able to do something
Yes.
with it.
So, yeah, Żuławski, stubborn as ever, he did not listen to Vaida's advice, and production kicked off in June 1976. It was daunting. They shot in the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. They went to the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia, the Baltic Sea, the deep underground in Polish salt mines. And that's just to name a few locations. Like there's many more. And at the start, people were excited to work with him. He was gaining momentum in that European art scene. He was a really respected filmmaker, and this was shaping up to be his magnum opus, truly. His excitement was contagious. The cast and crew, they felt it. And some say that this was his one film where people said that it felt most like family. They described it as being high on set, not from substances, or at least not to my knowledge, but on just creative energy and inspiration and just this exhilarating feeling of making something epic. I mean, you must know that feeling as well, no?
I don't think I've gotten to work on quite anything that's like that's felt like that for sure. There's definitely been sets that I've been on where it's like it feels like everyone is collectively working together to create something, and I hope that someday I do get to kind of be on that side of like we're creating something really good here, and it's like everyone knows it. But it's like seeing the film and kind of back to how distinct it looks, how it feels. I would imagine that if you're working on a film like this, it would be impossible to not like love going to work every day. Like you look at the costumes, look at the set, the visual style of the film. It's like, you know that you're making something that no one has ever seen before. Like, how do you not be excited for that?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's what makes the next part of this so heartbreaking. But before we get to the next part, I should also mention Żuławski was a very demanding director. It was either his way or the highway, and he was meticulous about every single detail. He had to have final say in everything, and people respected him for it, but at the same time, it's not that easy. So, like, apparently the cave scenes, those were shot in the Polish salt mine. Those were the hardest to film, and they were working sometimes almost 3 kilometers underground. They needed miners to help them get down there, and production just dragged on, partly because at the time making things in Poland was just slow, like props, costumes, set pieces. They took ages to build. So some scenes could not be shot right away, and delays just piled up. And so over time, the vibe on set started to shift, of course. And what started as this energized and passionate shoot just became brutal for nearly every department, especially in those mines that I mentioned. They filmed the mine scenes, during the shortest days of the year. I mean, not intentionally, that's just when they shot them. But so what that means is they would go underground and shoot these nightmare scenes and then come back up, and then it was dark up top again. So you're just living in darkness, and that's taking a toll on people. One crew member famously broke their own leg to get out of production. Some crew members ran away mid-shoot. One of the actors who played a Sherns ended up needing psychiatric help. Even the set manager ran away. They had to be replaced. Others were dealing with like depression, hallucinations, insomnia. Like it was just terrible. And one thing that really stuck out to me when I learned all of this was that line that's spoken in the film where, can't remember who says this, but it's so many have departed, but only a few have returned. And that seems to be the vibe. Have you ever heard of a production this intense? Like, what do you make of all of this?
I don't think I've ever heard of a production, well, at least not from the crew member side of things. Like, you definitely hear stories about actors, like, putting themselves through something to achieve something in a role. But yeah, like, when it comes to crew members, I think it's definitely one of those things where it's like the 70s. There was a lot less, like, regulation, because there's definitely a lot more rules now. But I think of like Daniel Day-Lewis, like he got hypothermia for The Crucible. I think like he slept inside of like a cabin that he made, and so it's like that's a personal choice. Like you did that yourself, dude. But with something like this, it's like it's hard to imagine that this could happen now. Like it would never fly.
No.
But it's like this is the one thing I can think about like film wise, where it's like, you know, we have stories about other films and everything that happens, but and I remember hearing that story about the guy with the leg, and I was like, that's absurd. But it's like the condition that they're working in, like we don't know what that was like. Yeah, and I've never dealt with like having to do something like that, like drastic, but also
Like, I would hope.
yeah. I mean, I think we all joke about like, what if I drove off a bridge and didn't have to work
Yes.
tomorrow? Like we say stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have this idea of we don't know what it's like to live in complete darkness, and so for them, I would imagine like the psychosis part of it, where they're going into a cave early days of the morning and then coming out and not seeing sunlight. That's already a pretty hard thing to do for anybody who works. Like I've worked on like a studio lot before where you're working on this like those giant studio sets where you're in the morning before the sun even comes up, and by the time you get out it's dark. And so I've had that before where I don't see sunlight for the whole day, not for multiple days on end.
Yeah.
But you've also had those moments where you were in there for hours and you come out and the sun is right there and it just blinds you. So I would imagine that it's pretty difficult to like get through that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Oh, I should also mention that I learned a lot of this from the 2021 doc Escape to the Silver Globe. That's where I learned the majority of this. It's actually on that new 4K release. I watched it on Polish Netflix. Surprisingly, it had English subtitles. But I highly recommend checking it out. It's about an hour and a half, I think 94 minutes, and just gives some incredible insight into everything that went down. But yeah, morale was low, to say the very least. Deadlines were slipping. People were exhausted. And more than anything, there was just this heaviness on set, just this creeping sense of uncertainty. People felt numb, just going through the motions. And it seems like Żuławski could sense what was coming, because in May of 1977, the 12th month of shooting, he wrote this diary entry, and it's chilling in hindsight. He wrote that, you know, the adventure was already over, and he wanted to keep going even if they halted the film, but he learned that he's been banished. I'm paraphrasing, but he knew before anything actually happened to the movie, like the sort of nail in the coffin, he knew that he was done for. And I think that's kind of eerie that he knew it was coming. But I mean, I guess he had, from previous experience, he knew it was coming.
He probably could feel a vibe.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Vibe
like
shift.
he probably saw it coming immediately as soon as like, I'm sure it's probably whoever he was talking to at the time. But like if they start asking too many questions, or they start getting to a point where like they start addressing things specifically, I could see how he was like, I gotta get out of here.
Exactly, yes. So that's when things started to fall apart, exactly there. So the former vice minister of cultural affairs in Poland, he had been somewhat lenient towards the film industry, but that changed with Wajda's Man of Marble in 1977, which was this bold critique of the government and the limits of artistic freedom. And so after that, authorities really started cracking down on what was being released. Enter Janusz Willemi, the newly appointed Vice Minister of Cultural Affairs. From what I understand, this guy hated the film industry. Like, he wanted to gut it and turn it into something more like the Polish TV industry, which at the time was state-controlled, safe, predictable. And on the literal first day of the job, Willemi halted production of On the Silver Globe. First day of his job, just wasted no time. And the reasons that he gave, allegedly, he was disturbed by the film's religious imagery and the controversial themes of political violence and oppression. But more officially, he blamed it on delays and budget overruns, which is total bullshit because they had already completed 80% of the film. And I think they were maybe 10 days away from finishing. So why would you cancel it at that point? It makes no financial sense. The money was already spent. And a lot of people say that this was an ego move. Like, Willemi wanted to make a statement now that he was in charge. He clashed with the former vice minister, and this was his way of showing who was in charge now. I mean, what do you think?
It's definitely an ego move. I think if there was like, if it was an instance where like they were going over budget, or like there were more production issues other than like the crew members stuff happening, like if it had to do with like an actual production issue on like the money side, and it was maybe early in the production, I could see how that would be an issue, but like it was almost finished. And we've seen the film now, so we know that like how he went about showing the footage that wasn't shot. And so on one hand, it's like, yeah, like you technically finished the movie, but not in the way it was intended. So yeah, I think it was definitely an ego thing. Like just shutting it down just to be able to say like he shut it down, but also the religious aspect of it, and even like the like critique of the Polish government. It's like, I mean, it's not really, it's an adaptation of something, but if the shoe fits, dude, go ahead and wear that thing, dude. I get how he could get upset about it, but at the same time, like, it's not my fault you're actively running this the way that this film is portraying it.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, Żuławski was such an easy target. He was already on thin ice from his past itself that it was like, of course he's going to go after this guy. So in June 1977, just a month after that bleak diary entry that I mentioned, after 473 working days, I think they had like 106 days off, 579 days in total of involvement, the production was shut down. And Żuławski was once again strongly advised to leave the country, this time within 24 to 48 hours. Before we go on, thoughts? Like, can you imagine putting that much time of your life into something and then just have it be ripped away?
I would imagine it's probably pretty painful. I mean, the thing that I think about the most as well is that he was able to like release it, and I think that's a big thing that like he probably is thankful for. I don't know it. I don't know how much he's commented on it as well, but I think about movies that have been canceled in like the last 10 years, movies that have been shelved, and they're not anywhere in the same like vein as something like on the Silver Globe. I mean, you have the Batgirl movie, and then Coyote versus Acme almost got shelved, but it's like just the concept of something being censored and being unreleased for whatever reason. It's like art should be accessible. That's the big reason why I always tell people, like, yes, it might be hard to find some movies, and you may have to go about it by other means and not be able to support it. But if that's the only way to watch it, then like that's the only way to watch it. And so, I mean, I think of like other stories of people like stealing a movie and like leaving the country with it just to make sure it gets released. Yeah. And maybe this film didn't go to that extreme, but you do have stories about the crew members who hid costumes, they hid props. They did what they could to like save the movie if they could go back and finish it, which we already know just didn't happen, or they tried to, and unfortunately at that point locations were no longer available, and actors, I believe, weren't available either or had aged out, whatever it may be. But he still had the option to go back and do it at some point, and I think that's probably the most important part of that, you know?
That's true. Yeah. I mean,
it's unfortunate, yeah.
Yeah. When he first heard the news, he was heartbroken. He broke down in tears, apparently, when it was confirmed. And he tried to appeal to Villamy, but it just didn't work. Villamy did not care. He ordered everybody to pack up and leave the set. Even worse, he ordered the props and the costumes to be buried and burned. Like, he wanted all of that gone. And the lead character's costumes were destroyed. There was even this huge model of the landing craft, something that took forever to build. That ended up being scrapped. And it's just sad, to put it bluntly. It breaks my heart every single time I think about it. And as you said, thankfully, there were some crew members that were able to stash what they could, props, bits of costume, fragments of the film, in their homes and in their studios, hoping that someday it could be finished. Kind of worked. But Żuławski, he was a mess. He was broken for a while, actually. And remember, like his career was taking up before all of this happened. But what ended up happening is his friends had to support him financially after all of this. He went to New York, debated taking his own life. I've heard, allegedly, that it was Andy Warhol, of all people, who talked him out of it. It's a weird fact. But what he did do with all of that rage and all of that heartbreak is he wrote the script for Possession in 10 days. And when you watch Possession, I'd argue that you could feel all that rage, all that pent-up rage, even in the relationship between Isabelle Adjani and Sam Neill? Sam Neill,
I think it's his name, yeah.
And yeah, I have a super wild anecdote. I can't believe I almost forgot to tell you this. This is wild. It's crazy. I wonder if you've heard of this. So get this. So the on the Silver Globe, it's been shelved. And at the time, Żuławski's father was serving as a Polish ambassador in Dakar. And Żuławski went to visit him. And when he arrived, the first person that he met was the caretaker of his father's home, someone in this very remote village. And Żuławski told this man that his life was in ruins, and that his family was stuck in Poland. He couldn't provide for his son. He was basically falling apart. And he asked the man for something like an object to protect him from all this misfortune. Have you heard of this?
I have not at all. Actually,
It's crazy.
This is crazy.
It's crazy. So he asked this man, give me a talisman, give me something to protect me from this misfortune. And so months later, Żuławski's mother gave him what the caretaker gave her to give to him, and it was a shaman's jacket. And he kept it in his home to ward off bad energy. But here's the crazy part. So he claimed that he only put on that jacket once, and it was one night after drinking too much vodka. And the very next day of him wearing that jacket, Valemi, the man who shot down on the Silver Globe, he died in a plane crash.
Yo, hold on a second.
Yeah. That was the reaction I was looking for.
I wonder if anyone was like with him, and he was like, "What if I put on the jacket? Like, what's gonna happen? They're like, it's gonna kill Valemi." He's like, "I'll do it." That's wild.
I'm pretty sure that was in that documentary that I watched. So crazy.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like wild to think about that. Can you imagine the next day he sees the news and he like looks at the jacket like it's a Spider-Man suit, like the black suit Spider-Man.
If only we had it earlier. Yeah, so feel free to look into that a bit more. It blew my mind. I remember just being like gobsmacked by that news. But
it's crazy.
Yeah, so 8 years later, 1985, Żuławski returned to Poland and finally agreed to complete On the Silver Globe. But it didn't happen right away. The cast and crew actually had to convince him. They pitched it as something small. They're like, oh, just finish it for the Cannes Film Festival and just for archival preservation, blah, blah, blah. And it was just kind of a good opportunity at the time as well. The Communist Party's grip on Poland was starting to weaken. So Żuławski finally said, okay, let's go, let's do this. He traveled back to the Gobi Desert to try and retrieve some of the production materials they'd left behind. But of course there was a problem and he couldn't reshoot the missing scenes. Some of the actors had died. They were just unavailable. Some of the crew couldn't be found. And as we said, many of those original costumes were destroyed. So what could he do? So he did the only thing he could do is he shot new B-roll footage, I guess, of contemporary Poland and dubbed it over this narration of him talking and explaining what was supposed to happen in the story. And in that voiceover, he doesn't just fill in the narrative, he openly reflects on what was done to him. And I believe he called his film Murdered by the Government, which is true. And here's what I find interesting is some people complain that these added B-roll scenes make the film harder to follow, but I actually think they help the film. Żuławski kind of guiding you through it, explaining what's missing. In a weird way, it invites you to imagine those lost parts, to actually understand the story better. And especially during this last rewatch, I was like, oh, I'm gripped by these scenes of just reading him describe what's going on. I mean, what do you think of those?
The first time I watched it, I didn't know anything about the history with the film, so I was wondering what was going on. I was like, why would he shoot this like this? And then, I mean, immediately after rewatching it, I was like, I gotta find out why. And so then I found out why. And watching it now, like with the context that you have for it, I think it's one of those movies that like sounds strangely enough like you should read a little bit before you watch it, just to have context. But I don't know. I mean, it does help with making you understand the story better because really those scenes are just never going to be shot. And it makes me think of like the version of Metropolis, which you have a poster of right behind you, for a long time that didn't have those scenes that were lost. And so there's a Blu-ray that was released in like 2017 that now has the footage included. But it's very damaged. And so it's hard to follow a lot of what's happening. And it's easy to kind of like look into why. And obviously like just film preservation, unfortunately, just is not great, and people didn't know how to do it for a long time. But I don't know if it's the best way that we're gonna be able to like understand the story. I'm all for it. I find the B-roll footage kind of fascinating, and at times like his specific phrasing of specific things I find really interesting. Like the murdering part is really essential to like just understanding like his mindset, and also just being like, screw you to the government, because at the same time, like, yeah, like you got to finish it, but we're not going to forget that you completely screwed us over for a hot minute, and this is the reason that the movie is the way it is.
I love that. I don't even want to call it petty. It's just it's angry and it's justified, truly. So all of this to say, in 1988, On the Silver Globe finally had its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. It wasn't a part of the competing lineup, it was just a special screening. And after that, it had a very limited run. In fact, for the first 3 screenings, Żuławski had to ad-lib the entire film, like the missing parts, and narrated himself, which I think would have been kind of cool to experience, because he probably would have changed what he says for those little narrations. But yeah, as we were saying at the start, 4 years after the film was incredibly hard to find, you couldn't get these subtitles anywhere. It circulated online through bootlegs, as you were saying. And those close to Żuławski said that he would have been appalled at the idea of it being shown commercially. He barely spoke about it in interviews. I think he once said that he was treated like a dog just lying in the middle of the street that could be kicked. So that's his experience of how he was treated making this film. Not too positive. And finally, in 2016, after his death, Daniel Bird led the charge to digitally reconstruct and restore the film. And it's been restored beautifully. As we hinted at earlier, the release, which I have right here, just came in the mail yesterday. Isn't it beautiful?
Gorgeous. She looks gorgeous. And I'm looking at my shopping cart right now. I mean, like...
This is why you should be watching on YouTube. It has this entire... Like, look at all that extra...
It'll get to me soon. It'll get to me soon.
It
Did
will.
you see that website also has all of his other movies on there?
Yes. I want them. I don't have too many of his movies. I think I own, interestingly enough, Cosmos.
Yeah. The Kino Lorber one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the same one.
Yeah. And I think I maybe have Possession. I'm unsure. But I'm so, this is honestly, I mean, I don't think I've ever received a piece of physical media in the mail where I held my breath. I'm not even being dramatic. I just held my breath and like gingerly opened it up. Like it was treasure.
Let's explain to the audience what we were doing last night as you received this. I was watching the SpongeBob SquarePants movie on 35mm, and I walk out of the theater to you being like, yo, this thing is insane. And I'm like, yo, this thing is insane.
I couldn't figure out what you were watching initially. I was like, wait a minute, what is that? What is that? And then it kind of clicked for me, and I just started laughing because we were on completely 2 different planets with our cinematic experiences. I can say, so this came yesterday. In preparation for this episode, I just watched the YouTube version because this didn't come early enough, but I did throw this on yesterday just to see the quality, like the transfer. It is unreal. Like, you are going to be blown away. It is so crisp. So it's stunning. It truly is stunning.
I do remember mentioning to you that I have a friend who works at a movie theater, and we were going to watch it on the screen. And then the minute I ordered it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait. Because I watched the one that I have at home, but I was telling him, I was like, if you're going to watch this for the first time, like, I want you to watch it in a good quality, not the way that I experienced it. So I'm excited to show it to him.
Yeah, you gotta let me know how that is. It's stunning. I'm probably gonna watch it sooner than later, and this is one of those films that like I can't really watch back to back too often because it is very heavy.
It's a heavy watch.
Yeah. But I may make the exception for this. It's beautiful. But yeah, anyway, that's the story of what happened to On the Silver Globe. As we said, it's incredibly ambitious, just an ambitious project from start to finish, but it's also in many ways, I think, the most refined film that Żuławski had made up until that point. You can really see a filmmaker from the scenes that you can see who had truly owned his craft. And I think it's captivating, just the sheer scope of what it tackles, the philosophical questions, the glimpses into mythology, religion, the scale of human suffering. And then, of course, if you pull back and look at things visually, it has a signature style. I mean, those warped wide angles, those dizzying crane shots and frantic handheld traveling shots, and the violence. I mean, so much. What do you make of it in the form that we have today, in this fragmented, incomplete form? Like, does it work for you, or is it more of a fascinating artifact?
It works for me. I think it works for me more than I think it did the first time. Obviously, like, knowing the context of it and like knowing the like why it looks the way that it does. But yeah, no, I mean, it like the first time I was watching it, I was like, wow, this is fascinating. I don't know how well it works for me right now, but knowing the context, knowing the history behind it, it's like you can't help but just like really admire it for what it is. Like, it almost feels like you're watching like a film version of like the Mona Lisa, like something that should like just has endured so much and somehow we have access to it. Incredible that we're even able to see it. It's insane to me that they were even able to like let him release it the way that it did, because there's in another alternate timeline, there's a version of this story that we're talking about where we don't see the movie and we just talk about like possession, and we talk about La Femme Publique and Samanka, or however you say that movie's name. And we're just talking about like, oh, have you seen that there was this movie that he did that got shut down and never released? And we would be like talking about it the same way that we were talking about Ryusuke Hamaguchi Solaris. Like, yeah, I think it's so awesome that this film is accessible now. But yeah, it's unfortunate the circumstances it had to deal with, but we're here.
Exactly. And you know, maybe things would have turned out differently if he had toned down everything, like if he made something smaller and more contained. But would it have been as bold and as ambitious and as haunting in as it is now in its unfinished form? I don't think so. I think it's good that he decided to just fully go for it. And if it had been completed on time, this would have come out just before Star Wars. Like, can you imagine a Polish sci-fi epic this raw, this cosmic tragedy hitting the world just before Star Wars essentially reshaped the genre? And I think that's what pulls me into this whole story. It's not just the film, it's the what ifs, the missed potential, the unfinished brilliance, like the legend of what could have been, you know? And I don't think it would have been as successful as Star Wars, even if it did come out when it did. Star Wars is obviously a lot more, you know, it caters to more people's, I don't know, what they can handle to see on camera.
yeah. It's a little more accessible.
Yes, accessible. There we go. But okay, I want to play a really fun, quick game with you. And it involves placing a bet that we can circle back to in 5 years. Unless you agree with me, in which case, I guess we wouldn't really be betting on anything. But hear me out. I guarantee, I have never believed anything more than I believe in this, that there will be a remake of On the Silver Globe announced in the next 5 years, full stop, or even like the entire Lunar trilogy. What do you think?
That's tough.
I'm telling you.
Because part of me wants to say like, that I would love to see a remake, and not in like wow, like this movie doesn't deserve to be remade, but part of me just wants to see like this story done justice. But part of me is also like I feel very hesitant, and so I think I'm very attached to like seeing this fragmented version of this story that almost feels like maybe those scenes aren't needed, and maybe those scenes that we're missing, and maybe this new adaptation is different and it's done completely. I don't know. I'm fascinated by it. And I'll oppose you only because I want to be proven wrong. But yeah, it's hard for me to think that like they would remake this. Even I want to say the American film industry probably would just be like, I don't think this film would do well if it was. That's not to say that it's not going to be remade, but I think if this film would be made now, it would be critically received very well if it was done in the right hands. I would think it'd be done very well if it was done by the right person. But I think audiences would not be as accepting. I think it would be immediately like panned by Christian nationalists. But yeah, part of me thinks like I would love to see a version of this, but also I don't know. It's fascinating to think about. Like I'm torn, and again, I'm gonna oppose you just so I can be wrong.
Yes, I'm saying it. These are my words right now. I think it's the perfect storm. This 4K release just came out. This has been years in the making as well. I think this release is 13 years in the making. When I say 5 years, I'm not saying like it will be brought to the screens in 5 years, but I mean there will be some form of announcement that somebody is attached and that it is happening. Do
you think there's a chance that like maybe it's announced and then like it's just in production hell for so long that we never see it?
No, I think it's gonna come. I think it's gonna happen. I'm telling you, like I firmly believe this will be remade. It would probably make more sense if it was the entire Lunar trilogy, though, and especially if like somebody in Hollywood tackles it, then it's like, oh yay, franchise opportunity of multiple.
So then, who is your pick for director? Because I feel like there's one obvious choice, but I feel like it's too safe again. Like kind of back to the original one that we were talking about with Possession being remade. But and I also don't want to say it because part of me is also like, you just did this movie and I feel like you should do something else.
Yeah. I don't know. I like in an ideal world it wouldn't be somebody from Hollywood. Yeah. I don't even know why this person is coming to mind, probably because of the bleakness of the film, but Magnus von Horn, who did Girl with the Needle.
Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard quite a bit about it.
Yeah, I don't, like that, he just keeps popping up in my mind. But that being said, I mean, it would be nice if it was somebody Polish.
Yeah.
Magnus von Horn is not Polish. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think that's my wish. I think realistically it probably would be made by somebody in Hollywood if this was to be tackled. So
I can't imagine like another, I guess maybe another major film industry doing it, but it's so difficult to think about like, because I don't think Poland would remake it. You know what I mean?
yeah, I
But
think
if
that's
not
wishful
them, who
thinking.
else? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
Hollywood.
interesting to think about
Yeah.
who. Yeah, Hollywood. Is another person. Like only other like major industry I could think of.
Yeah, same. I don't know. Well, I mean, it's food for thought, but I guess we'll see in 5 years when my prediction comes true. So
Yeah, and when we're sitting in those theaters in IMAX, texting each other like, "Yo, what did we just see?" And it ends with Miracle Return and in part two, post credit scene.
yes, oh my god. So yeah, that's kind of all for me. I guess my parting sentiment is that On the Silver Globe is a difficult film. It's messy, it's fragmented, it can be hard to follow, but my hope with today's episode was to give some context, to help people see it in a different light, and maybe with a little bit of understanding and a little more appreciation, they can just view it differently and maybe want to give it another go. Or for listeners who haven't watched the film but somehow have listened to this entire podcast episode, I hope this excites you, because honestly, what a marvel this could have been if it had been completed the way Żuławski had envisioned. And I think that's why we talk about lost art, you know? That's why we keep coming back to these forgotten and unfinished films and keeping them alive, because that's important, keeping the legacy alive, the blood, the sweat, the tears of the people who made them alive. And I mean, yeah, I'm getting emotional, so I'm gonna pass it on to you for closing thoughts.
I love this fragmented, just messy film that just unfortunately never got to be made properly. I'm really glad you invited me to talk about this, because for the last year and a half, I want to say, like, I have been just absolutely marveling this film. And it kind of comes back to these moments, especially now talking about like the idea of a remake. Like, how could they even tackle something like this? How could they plan to film or even put to film something as iconic as this and make it feel fresh? It's tough because when you're watching it for the first time, it feels like you're watching something you've never seen before. And even some 40 years later, we're watching it and it's just like, it still blows you away. It's just really one of those things where I'm glad that this is accessible. I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad that we're able to see it regardless of the format that it's in, regardless of if it's a 720p crappy bootleg copy. I have this thing now that I've just been like in my own ass about, where I just say like cinema now more than ever, or like, just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm such around film people all the time now that it's just so easy to say stuff like that. But like this film, everything it stands for is so vitally important to like censorship, to the way that media is shown. And at the end of the day, like, it doesn't have to be a movie as strong as this. Just like, films should exist. Films should be accessible. Watch it however you can. Break the law if you need to. Support it if you can. You know what I mean? But ultimately, like, the film was already made under these strenuous circumstances. Break some rules if you have to. Watch it. You know what I mean?
Yes, soundbite right there. That was beautiful. I love that. Yeah, that's sadly all we have time for today. I think we covered it all, though. Do you want to share where the good folks can find you?
I'm pretty big on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I use Twitter quite a bit, and it's mainly just because it's so easy to use. TikTok, I have to put effort in. Instagram, I have to put effort in. But I love Twitter. I always post all my thoughts on there. There's a link tree on all my socials, so if you find one of them, you can find all of them on Letterboxd as well. You can hear my crappy takes about the SpongeBob SquarePants movie in 35mm. But yeah, I'll be there.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming on. Like I said, I think you were the perfect guest for this. I think we covered it all. And for all of you listening or watching, let me know if you've seen On the Silver Globe. I hope you have. What you thought. I'm really proud of this episode we recorded today, and I hope all of you enjoyed it. So until next time, keep watching excellent films, keep celebrating them, and keep on keeping them alive.